Thank you very much, Mem Naidu. I appreciate the brief propaganda you've just read out here. No, I have to promise Ndates Kosana there. I noticed that he used his paper and notebooks and so on. That the likelihood that we will follow Namibia is in the struggle he saw right in front of his face of the Speaker of the Legislature. Never give up. You must learn from those who report to you. Persist. So first, Ndates Kosana, you must catch up with us. I'll say something about technology later on here, but I wanted to say that Namibia, watch it, we are coming. The speaker here has given us the example of what leadership must do. Mayor Johnson, I know why the organizers chose Durban. I've lived here for 16 years. They know what attracts people to a good development seminar. It's a good venue. And a good place. There are many other outside of hours things to do. Yeah. Many years ago, we went to a SALGA, South African local government. No, it wasn't existing at that time. We were part of the International Union of Local Authorities, Africa section. Now, the notice had said that we were going to meet in Harare. Now, obviously, many of us came there and so on, only to find that when we get to Harare, the venue is actually about an hour's drive from the city to an institute of local government in Harare. You should have seen the horror in the eyes of some of the delegates. They were mad because some of their planning was about doing things in Harare. So the choice of venue, its location is absolutely important for other things. I thought as a way of thinking about what we must do here, our constitution, there's a pocket version of the constitution that has been put together. It's probably there also in the main one that looks at what are the constitutional decisions that have been made so far, but also just reflecting on what is the nature of the changes that occurred. And one of the things that is pointed out is that the changes that an agreement brought about to the legal system were nothing short of revolutionary. This is a language used in the Constitution. Some of you might think that I'm reading from some other texts. No, this is our Constitution. This was in reference to the agreement by all parties during the negotiations to abandon the Westminster constitutionalism that prevailed under apartheid, replacing it with the supremacy of a justiciable constitution, as is the case now. In the past, I defeated the clerk in court on some legal matter that I could also carry a stick as an African. That being my culture, they went and changed the law so that he stays the winner. It's parliamentary stuff. Parliament is supreme. If the constitution was in place, he would have been told to jump. Right? This is the difference between what existed in the past and what exists now. The supremacy of the constitution is the quality of difference. And the reason it is regarded as revolutionary is because not only of the legal system, including what it made for, as compared to what existed in the past. The fragmented and ridiculous voting system that existed was wiped off the plate completely. One person, one vote was put into place, irrespective of your class position in society or the race or whatever language you speak, tribe you belong to. That was swept off the ground. So that kind of change was absolutely revolutionary. But I thought, as I thought about this thing, that maybe we should hit a caution cited by one Donella Meadows in her book, Thinking in Systems, in which she quotes the words of someone I have no clue about who he is, Robert Persig, who writes a book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. But listen to what this guy says. He says, if a factory is torn down by the rationality which produced it, is left standing, then that rationality will simply produce another factory. If a revolution destroys a government, but the systematic patterns that produced, of thought that produced that government are left standing, then those patterns will repeat themselves. So much talk about the system and so little understanding. Ma'am, I thought you were the best place to talk to us and improve our understanding of the system or systems as you are going to talk to us. If the patterns of thought that brought about the government are remain standing, then they will simply reproduce and repeat the pattern that presented. So how do we solve this problem so that it stays solved? I suspect that's the challenge of what he's going to talk to us. That is a reflection that is appropriate to where we are now, 20 years down the line, as we look back, whether what we have done honors our responsibility to have uprooted what happened in the past sufficiently out. And this is why there's a call for a radical rupture with practices that are not responsive to the triple challenges. Despite the huge reproductive, or rather redistribution that has occurred in our country, providing services that did not exist to many people in a variety of ways, but stubbornly the levels of poverty stays with us. Inequality has actually grown, and so we have serious problems within us. Why are the problems that we are seeking to solve not staying solved? I suspect this lies behind wanting to examine this one theory, which I want to suggest should not be looked at as the one theory alone that will produce an answer, but it's a very useful one. And the reason I'm saying so is that we, those of us who were involved in the writing of the Constitution, had a sense of this thing. When we describe the relationship between the three spheres of government as interconnected, interdependent, yet distinct, recognizing that, in fact, as we argued, what existed here in the past were deliberately designed in a particular manner, and so if you are to undo the mess, you need an equally deliberate system, but that is mindful of the variety of effects it has had. Some of them we can assume good intent were not intended, all right, if we become gracious, so to speak. But we can't use the same method that was used to create them to solve this problem. So we need a different way of dealing with these problems. And my sense is that people gathered here are at the cutting edge, because you lead teams and you are responsible for creating an environment inside the institutions that we come from, Parliament and the legislatures, that is crucial to undoing what we are talking about, the problems that we are talking. The reason we are meeting like this here today is to contribute towards improving the quality of life of people, okay, in the kind of things that we do. It is not in an engagement in theoretical mumbo-jumbo, intellectual exercise that is unrelated to the resolution of the problems that people who elected public representatives to deal with are doing. So in a sense, I want to, Dadeskosana, make a detour of something that I suspect is not often always spoken about in forums like this for some strange reason I don't understand. Maybe I'm wrong, you will prove me wrong when you get an opportunity to contradict me, which is your responsibility to do in a seminar. That's not the only place you can contradict me. The first responsibility of leadership is self-care. We now know. We now know that the first responsibility of leadership is self-care, meaning a huge degree of self-awareness, of mind, body, emotions, and spirit. These are often considered soft stuff. You know, what is this meshy stuff he's talking about? But this is the heart, at the heart of creating an environment in an organization, in a family, that is conducive to collectively using the resources that are there effectively or in the most effective manner. When I know what my basic strengths and weaknesses are, and what are the triggers, what are the things that get me into all sorts of things, then I'm able to work around those so that I minimize the negative ones, and I emphasize collaborating with others around my strength, and I invite others with the strength where I have weaknesses so that the teams that are made are the most effective teams. Now, if we do not do this, then we become toxic to the organization and institutions that we lead. The things that mess us up outside there come with us because we are unable to leave them on the door of the workplace. They come right in with us. And so we take it out on those who we lord over, let me be crude, in quotes, and those who lead us as well, in a variety of ways. So unless we pay attention to what we now know is the effect of unresolved, unprocessed, and often unknown issues in us that affect our relationship with others, we create conditions for ineffective organization and minimize the contribution that is positive that we make. Otherwise, what happens is that continually we want to find solutions to problems and we blame individuals and others when in fact what should be dealing with are things that can be dealt with and dealt with effectively. Let me make two examples from this being the first anniversary of Madiba's passing away. I haven't myself read this. I don't remember reading it. But I'm advised that Madiba, thinking about his longtime friend Oliver Tambo, says, I suspect Oliver Tambo would have lived a little longer if he was not very conservative in the kind of things the kind of advice he refused. He refused to go to places where his body would be massaged so that he lessens his, the impact of stress on him and similar things. He used to dismiss it. I don't know what image of massage he had. Having been an aspirant priest in his early childhood. So Madiba was sad when he was saying that. He was reflecting on his friend and why he thought, you know, some things could have been done, which explains, in a sense, he was suggesting indirectly that he has survived the length he did because he took care of himself in that way, all right? 95, I mean, 5 years short of 100. But Madiba also says that, quoting somebody, that we are often more powerful than the assumptions we have about how powerful we can potentially be. And because we are not cognizant of that reality, we act in a submissive, in a ridiculously out of order manner, when we should be taking charge and doing things that we potentially have. And so, in other words, he's pointing out that, look, there is a potential we have as individuals and as teams that we often underestimate in the impact it can have to solve the problems that we're confronting. And if we don't pay attention to those things, we are underestimating the impact that we can have. There's an old man who, when Speaker Sisulu chaired one session, I drew his attention to the fact that there's an old man sitting next to me whose birthday it was on the 20th of November. He was 80 that year. This was in 2011. And of course, he points out that let him stand so that we know who to give birthday present to. And of course, the old man refused to stand. But because of where the glances went to, they realized who it could only be, okay? Now, that man, in his youthful days, I must tell this story. He went to Moscow to visit one of his friends, Moses Kotane, who was lying paralyzed in hospital but could still speak. And he asked him, "What are you doing in Moscow?" He says, "Are you on holiday?" He said, "What holiday?" "Well, I'm here to do work here." Tall revolutionary propaganda. And then he says to him, "Listen here, do not be as foolish as I was. Look at where I am now. I'm paralyzed. I can't serve the revolution anymore because I refuse to advise to rest, to take leave. I used to challenge them that they are promoting laziness. This is absolute laziness. What holiday? You are delaying the revolution. You are delaying the struggle." He says, "I've now know late in my life that we should actually take holiday." Subsequently, just to tell a story short, the same man gets a stroke. This is about 2 years ago. He gets a stroke and someone from Durban phones him. "You give us this advice that Moses Kotane gave you and you don't follow it yourself." Now, he was being very mean because the reasons he got a stroke were a little more complicated than that. Okay, I won't go into that. But I'm just pointing out to you that you do not serve us and serve the institutions that you are part of and your families well if you do not take care of yourself. You undermine the efficacy of those organizations, the family included. You are then not able to serve people first, which is almost always what we often talk about. Put people first, then the organization, then the cause. In that order, and then yourself. This is how it is often put across. I'm qualifying that even as you put people first, take care of yourself, because you'll take care of the people better and for longer. That's my basic argument, all right? There's an entire relationship between the two, and we shouldn't pose them as negative, contradictory forces. They are not. When you take care of yourself and you take care of the cause, the organization that you play off, and that the organization itself must be reflective of that. And the reason I'm saying this to you guys, you are often the ones who, when we interact with your staff, say you are the ones who are sitting on them, who are causing them all sorts of trouble. So let's say the fish rot van die kop af. So say the Afrikaners. But this is also what Bob Garrett, who introduced executive education in the United Kingdom, argues in the fish rots from the head. Basically arguing that those in leadership must themselves do things that will find resonance throughout the organization, and the effect will be very powerful. If you do that from the leadership that you often occupy, you will have that kind of impact. I do want to argue with Ntate Skosana slightly in his assumption that only if the political sphere changes that the image of the entire institution will change. It doesn't follow necessarily. You are underestimating the impact of an institution that is run well, whose evidence of the work it does is out there, irrespective of the politics that are happening there, okay? Don't underestimate the, in fact, Caroline Luken's mayor in the United States, in a book he published in 2011, argues that, he was talking about government, that in the relationship between public representatives, the people, and public managers are the most crucial. Whatever the people say and the public representatives say, if the public managers are not interested, that thing will not see the light of day. Isn't that true? It's true. So now you see how the pillar rests. It's the people, the public representative, they are public representatives, and the public managers. I don't know whether you recognize the consequences and the significance in this, in the manner in which you conduct yourself and the institutions that you run. I'm pointing out your crucial role, an indirect contradiction to Ntate Skosana's assumption that only if the politics are clean, so to speak, let's use that language, will the institutions be fought. Of course, that's a great necessary condition to exist. It will actually multiply the good that the officials are doing on behalf of what has already been agreed upon, and is generally good and comes from the people, such as the 5 priorities that has been agreed on since 2009 in South Africa, that we will prioritize rural development, that we will provide decent jobs, that we will prioritize health, education. Okay, is that 5? Rural development. Eh? That's 5 now. I'm repeating. Fighting crime and corruption. Those are the 5 priorities that we have got. Now, I want to get at you now, okay. Decent jobs. One of the requirements for decent jobs, and the legislatures agreed with this idea of the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Committee, which says, amongst other things, it is not only in place to urgently bring about catalytic infrastructure throughout the country, but that in order to make sure that it does its job good, that infrastructure must demonstrate how it produces skills, how it promotes localization of jobs, of materials, of employment, of entrepreneurs that are used in those projects, and so localization, okay? And then you go and buy your bags to legislature in China. Okay, I'm just illustrating how it is not your intention, okay? It is not your intention to undermine this, but somehow it does, okay? So we must reflect about those kind of things. During the joint sitting, which brings us together as the national and provinces in the NCOP and so on, the minister launches the campaign for no violence against women and children. Count me in, all right? And then at the end of her speech, she announces some of the paraphernalia that we are going to have to wear, okay? Guess what? And I knew exactly what's happening. The Minister of Economic Development stood up from his seat and went to where the paraphernalia were, to go and check their labels. I knew already what he was going to find. Optrect, less from China. Now, the speaker, the national chairperson, and the deputy chairperson, and myself were not involved in the, and the speakers and deputy speakers in the provinces were not involved in the procurement of the bags, nor the minister, Susan Shabangu, in the presidency, involved in the procurement of the T-shirts. Okay, the point I'm making is that there's a hell of a lot of things that you can do that are within your influence that will go along with what is already agreed upon. To build the textile industry, to build the leather industry, to bring realization of the commitment that government and obviously all other institutions must use 75% of their procurement locally, so that we boost local industry, so that we deal with the ills of poverty, unemployment, and so on. Otherwise, we are simply running down our own industry for others outside to live in their own industries. This is the power, the purchasing power that you guys have. That if you look at it carefully and how you deploy it, that you can find yourself in the wrong part of what is happening. Okay. This is a guidance. When you, the reason why I pulled out my torch promptly, not that this Nkosana did not have it. He uses a smartphone which has a torch. But as I was on my feet with my torch, because I anticipate, if it is not because the presenter does not have a pointer, the lights will go off. So in anticipation, we must be ready, okay? Now, I'm pointing out the power and influence of the officials, both in government and in parliament, in the legislatures. The question that we are posing 20 years down the line is whether the organizational machinery that you lead, that we are part of, is sufficiently responsive to the changing environment. Whether, as Ntate Nkosana spoke about earlier on there, deploying research, asking questions about whether we take history seriously and recognize its value, so that we record systematically and document, including in the 11 official languages, or the languages that are spoken in that particular province as is officially requirement, both in print and audio, using appropriate technologies, digitizing, so that these can stay for as long as possible. What we were doing in Timbuktu, we must do ourselves here in advance. Not only so that when we look back, when others who come after us look at and want to research, they must find material in the languages that they speak. You mustn't assume the researchers are going to be English speakers, okay? That they'll be speaking other languages. Just across the border here, Ntate Mona from Lesotho, he wants to come and hear. He wants to hear it in Sesotho. He prefers to hear it in Sesotho and hear. How in the legislatures, where Sesotho is an official language, what's the nature of what was taking place there? He mustn't be forced to only hear it in one language. When in fact, in the Constitution, you say people have a right to use their own languages. But in practice, you don't do that in how you keep your records, audio or otherwise. And whether we are leading in the deployment of appropriate technologies in these institutions, mindful of the shifting, disruptive nature of technology, given the advances that are happening. Now we know that one of the biggest things that is up there in the environment is what is called, well, whoever has data and how it is used, for what purpose, and how it is mined and used with other data. You, as legislative sector, sits on a mindful of data that is priceless. Are you treating it with such respect? Are you treating it with such respect? And do you have your systems in place to use it appropriately for its members, for the public out there, so that the children that you want finally to sit in your places understand where you came from? And those who want to become public representatives can see where these institutions came from. The global impact of things that happen inside things have changed dramatically. The speed with which a cell phone image gets throughout the country. Just as we said, listening to the why we chased out people from Parliament, from the National Assembly. Someone draws my attention to the Speaker in Australia, Honorable Bishop, having chucked out 18 members of the Labour Party on the same day, Thursday. I'm saying 24 hours later, we noticed that in 2 parliamentary sittings, plenaries, almost the same thing happened, of course for different reasons. The global impact of the work you do is immediate. The consequences of the misstep that you make or the good step is on global platforms in seconds. So have we got the appropriate sensitivity to recognize what it means for the kind of work we are doing? We are supposed to be exemplifying how these places that we run are good public platform for consideration of important issues. Sectoral parliaments, for example. We have had the Children's Parliament and the Disability Parliament recently. What has been the consequences? What has followed those immediately in the provincial legislatures or in the national legislature itself? What actions and steps have already been taken to advance the content of the declarations or the summary of the issues people raised there for purposes of being responsive to these different sectors in our society that have an interest in the quality of work that we are doing? Children and people with disability. One of the things the DPSA, the Disabled Peoples of South Africa, points out every time is that we have the grandest plans, but when they come to our places and so on, they still find weaknesses that they don't understand. Why are they not being dealt with? So this is a challenge that I put across to you. We will be inclusive and meaningful only if we are responsive. We do not need additional mandates. There are things that are within our influence, including what we do over what we eat, whether we exercise, whether we silence our mind for periods of time and so on. I've given the organizers an interesting 18-point, let me summarize it as brain tips for professionals like yourselves. That comes from people who are working on these things because they are crucial. How do we effectively address those things that happen in our constituencies? The turnaround for managing things that have already been dealt with. These legislatures happen in a multi-party system of democracy. What are we doing to advance the value of diversity, the skills for managing difference and conflict, which is what in other places, because of the degrees of homogeneity, although that is really a pipe dream, because of the migration and other factors, homogeneity is disappearing very fast. We, like other jurisdictions, have to deal with huge diversity. This is why in our orders we talk about united in diversity and so on. In practice, should anybody be bothering and wondering what happened to the language that I speak, the Nama, the teaching of sign language, etc., etc. This forum is a critical constituent part of the Speakers Forum. We must be the change that we expect others to be. What is the nature of environmental practices in your legislatures? What level of energy saving you impose on government which you do not reflect in your own practices? What women-friendly environment do you practice in your workplaces? The timing of your meetings? Gender equality? Are you living up to the things you are demanding accountability from the state and how you are operating yourself? Okay, now this is you as the legislative sect, as the official dome that carries the political system. Are you displaying those qualities the political system you are carrying and supporting is demanding of the rest of society? Why should people take you seriously if you're not walking your talk? Thank you very much.